In the later years of the Cold War, the economy of the USSR was growing at about half the rate of the economy of the United States, and there was a bit of civil unrest caused by a lack of government transparency and the previously mentioned bad economy. On top of that, there was no clear leadership of the party, as the last two general secretaries had died of old age and the stress of the job while in office, which is, and the stress was probably pretty high, so, it's not really their fault. Um, because of these unfortunate deaths, the Kremlin had turned from what was a symbol of the power of the Soviet Union, into basically a glorified funeral home. And the people who were being put in office to solve the problems of civil unrest and the economy were dying before they could get to that. So, to solve these problems, a relatively young politician named Mikhail Gorbachev was brought in. Gorbachev was notable for many things, including a really cool birthmark on the top of his head, and being the first general secretary to have been born after the Soviet Revolution. People hoped that he would not die long enough to fix the actually pretty major problems the Soviet Union was facing at this time, and, he kind of succeeded, 50-50, 50%. To attempt to solve the problems, he proposed some newfangled philosophies of government that he hoped would help both the economy and the government. These ideas boiled down to two basic concepts: glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, meaning restructuring. Perestroika, or openness, was a dramatic restructuring of the economy and a bit of restructuring of the government. The idea was that there would be more freedom in the market so that it would incentivize people to make their own small businesses and attempt to work harder, much in the same way that capitalism works in the United States now. Another thing that they attempted to do was to decentralize, meaning that the different parts of the Soviet Union would create what they wanted, and it would improve efficiency and reduce waste. As you saw earlier, it kind of said failure a little bit, and that's because by decentralizing and allowing a free market structure, the government lost control over the economy, and people stopped paying taxes, which meant that the government was unable to give money back to places that had lower incomes. And around the time that perestroika was implemented, that dramatic dip that you just saw in the graph occurred. Glasnost was the idea that government should be conducted more out in the open. This was achieved by decensoring many books, and a greater degree of freedom was allowed in the media. Through this, there was a dramatic increase in criticisms of the government because the media was allowed to actually report what was happening in the country. This also did not have the desired effect, to put it mildly, although it had the same good intentions as perestroika. And here is our original document.
As long as this gate is closed, as long as this scar of a wall is permitted to stand, it is not the German question alone that remains open, but the question of freedom for all mankind. In the 1950s, Khrushchev predicted, "We will bury you." But in the West today, we see a free world that has achieved a level of prosperity and well-being unprecedented in all human history. In the communist world, we see failure. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
So this document originated from Ronald Reagan at the Brandenburg Gate on June 12, 1987. The purpose seems to be to boost his own public image, as lots of people are against the wall, and if he opposed it, he would get a boost in awesomeness, I guess. Some values include the opinion of Ronald Reagan, the leader of the United States, which is pretty sizable, and it heightens the idea that Gorbachev was in charge of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Some limitations include the fact that it was obviously intended to be provocative and perhaps doesn't reflect, the intricacies of the relationship between the U.S. and the USSR. It does not contain any actual information, just Reagan saying, "Tear down this wall," which, while interesting, isn't actually like super jam-packed with facts. Neither policy worked, and when put together, they worked even less and kind of fed into each other. So the negative economics effects of perestroika were complained about more freely because of the increased freedom of speech of glasnost, and it was a repeating cycle. All of this dissatisfaction with the government culminated in the August coup, which occurred in August of 1991, in which some more traditional communists tried to take back the government from Gorbachev. This was successful, kind of. They ended up returning the government to Gorbachev after a little while, but then he declared that he was resigning and the Soviet Union was officially disbanded. Naturally, because Gorbachev, through his policies of glasnost and perestroika, almost single-handedly ended this Cold War by driving the Soviet Union to ruin, the Western world loves him. He was awarded the 1990 Nobel Peace Prize, and he has been included in Louis Vuitton handbag ads, which is weird.